What's up, guys? My name is Tim. This is New Craft Workshop. It's been a minute. I took a week and a half off, and sorry I missed you guys last week, but we're back at it. A couple new projects this week and a couple extra videos I'm going to toss in this week for some things you guys have asked about down in the comments of the previous videos. So, as I was saying, my name is Tim. This is New Craft Workshop. If you've been here before, welcome back. We truly appreciate all you guys' support. If this is your first time visiting our channel, number one, welcome in. Number two, what took you so long? It's pretty fun here. We do some really awesome beginners stuff on this channel. And number three, go ahead, go down below this video, click that thumbs up button, turn on those notifications, and give us a subscribe. Join us all the time for tons and tons of beginners content here on our channel. So a couple quick things as always before we get to today's builds. Number one, last week's winner is non-existent because we didn't hit the numbers I asked you for last time we posted one of these episodes. At the end of this episode, I'll give you guys the new numbers. We need a certain amount of thumbs up, a certain amount of comments, and a certain amount of new subscribers. If we hit those three goals, I give away a shop tool valued around 40 to 50 bucks to a random person down in the comments. So wait till the end of the video. Stick around if you don't mind. Watch that. I'll give you the numbers we need for this video. Let's give away something next week. It's been 2 weeks since we gave away something. Last week, the winner from the previous episode, never heard from them. I give you guys always until Monday, which is 3 days after I post these videos. If you don't respond by then, sorry, you snooze, you lose. But let's get back after it on this episode. Let's give away some cool stuff like we have in the past. Real quick, number two, I want to reemphasize what we do here at New Craft Workshop. This channel was started to help beginners who are getting into woodworking. I've had a ton of interaction with every single person that has taken the time to leave us a comment, and I truly appreciate each and every one of those, even those of you who have disagreed or thought I didn't do something the way you thought it should have been done. I will interact with each and every one of you. That being said, there's been some comments lately on these videos that talk about, well, this is very basic, it's very simple, a 6-year-old could do it. Guess what? Beginner woodworking is very basic. Beginner woodworking is easy, especially if you are intermediate or advanced or a professional woodworker. I am not going to show anything on this channel that a beginner can't do, even if it's on my intermediate series. A beginner can do it if they have the proper tool set. Nothing that I build here requires a ton of knowledge in woodworking. The intermediate series definitely steps up the tools you're going to need, but we haven't built anything overly difficult in that series either. We've just expanded the use of all of the tools out in our shop. So that's it. I just wanted to address that before we got after another beginners woodworking series because it's for beginners. So that's it. That's all I got for you this week. Let's get right after build number one. All right, build number one is that cool little plant stand you just saw. Now, I am making these specific plant stands today in this video for my mom, so there was a specific height request on these. She wanted something to put some ivies on, I think they're called, because they kind of drape down and hang. She wanted these to be 18 inches tall, but as always with everything we do on this channel, what do I tell you guys all the time on every single build we do here? Make it your own. So we are going to cut our legs on this particular project to 18 inches. If you want yours shorter, just cut your legs shorter. Everything else should work. Maybe the bottom brace needs to be cut a little bit shorter, and you'll see as we start the assembly process what I'm talking about there. But yeah, this thing is completely scalable as always. So on every single video, when we do these series, we always start with our cut list. Now, for this particular project, you are going to be using 2x4s and 1x2s. That's all we're going to need as far as material. I have 2 pieces of 2x4 cut to 8 inches long each. I have some 1x2s. We have 2 pieces. These are cut to 3.5 inches long each. I have 2 pieces here that are cut to 6 inches each. And then I have 4 pieces for the legs. Again, mine are cut to 18 inches. Scale this as tall or as short as you want to by adjusting the length of these 4 pieces. Now, our legs are going to be made in the style of an A. We are going to use the 5-degree angle on all of our cuts. So, top, bottom of our legs are going to be cut at a 5-degree angle. We want that angle running parallel with each other. I think I've described this to you before. Whenever we do a leg assembly, we want our top angle and our bottom angle to be parallel. So we don't want one running this way and one running this way, because that is not going to get us a flush setting leg on the ground. So our 4 long pieces are going to be cut top and bottom at 5 degrees so that they form a nice flush connection to the top, to the bottom of the top, and to the ground. And then we've got a couple braces. One for each leg is going to go in the center. I know my arms are crisscrossed, but basically like this. And then the longer brace is going to go at the bottom just to stabilize this thing. Now, these 4 pieces that make up the brace, these 5-degree angles are going to be cut in opposite directions. We want these to form, I think this is called a trapezoid. I know, we talk math and I hate it. I think this is a trapezoid. We want our angles cut in opposite directions on these 4 pieces. That's it. If you do not have a miter saw, all you really need to do is plot out your 5-degree angle. If you're going to be cutting this by hand, the only difference is you're just going to cut it on a 5-degree angle instead of a 90-degree angle. It's going to take you a little bit longer, but it is something you can do. I think we've talked about this before. I would highly recommend you guys, as you progress, one of the first things you should purchase for your shop, if you're going to be doing simple projects like we do here on this series, is an inexpensive miter saw. And as always, I'll pop a link down in the description below. There's some really good steals on some really low end price-wise, but still good quality saws that you can pick up on Amazon. It's going to definitely be a step up for those who are using the plastic miter box and a hand saw. So all we're going to need this time for this project in our tool list is going to be a couple things. We are going to need our drill, and we are going to need a countersink bit to drive some holes in here and drive some screws in. So to drive them in, we're going to need our driver with the appropriate bit. We need a little bit of wood glue, and that's it. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to head over to the miter saw. Now, all of the links I've given you are our finished lengths. So for example, this piece we are cutting at 6 inches. We are going to cut angles on this. We want our long end, when our angles are cut, to be 6 inches. If you're a little bit short, a little bit long, it's completely okay, because when these legs go together, you can always raise or lower until it fits nice and tight in this. We are going to start this assembly by putting our top together anyway. That's our most important connection point. So once that's together, we're going to lay it down on the table. We can adjust this bottom piece up and down until it fits nice and tight in that frame. So first thing we need to do is get everything cut to 5 degrees. I'm going to head over to the miter saw and do that. 3.5 inch. Again, we're going to cut opposite angles. Just make sure that our top length is 3.5 roughly. Again, if you're doing this by hand, it's going to vary a little bit. So head over to the miter saw, get all of these things cut down, everything at a 5-degree angle. Let's do this. Now, one of the benefits to a miter saw is we're just going to set this at 5 degrees, lock it in place, and we don't need to move this. This is going to give us all of our angles cut fairly accurately. And when I say fairly accurately, that's because I'm not going to measure all of these pieces. I know that this piece is already cut to 6 inches, and I'm just going to use my shadow line on my saw to try to keep my long end as close to that 6-inch total length as I can. So let's get these pieces cut. Now you'll see on this one, I'm just rotating this instead of flipping it. That's because on these particular pieces, remember, we want our angles parallel, not in opposite directions. All right, so we're back from the saw, and as you can see, when these are flush on the ground, they give us our 5-degree angle this way, but we're also flush on the top where our top of this is going to rest. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to countersink and pre-drill our holes necessary for this thing to come together. And what we are going to do is we are going to put this together basically like this. This is our top piece, and then this is what I was telling you about. The longer piece, if it's not exact, this can be moved up or down until it goes in there and fits tight, and that's where you're just going to countersink this. So we're going to wait and countersink those at the end. First thing we need to do is we need, on either side of this, coming through the side, we want to countersink so that we can drive a screw into this board right here. So we're going to need one on either side of this, and then this particular board is going to get two that go through this. That is actually what's going to hold this together like this. Now, if you are countersinking two through here and two through the sides, I know you might be thinking about, well, aren't they going to interfere with each other? Very good question. But we are going to use some screws that are long enough to get through this particular board once this is countersunk and get into this board ever so slightly. And the reason that we're doing that is, like I tell you guys all the time, most of the time when I'm using screws and brads here on any of these builds, those are there to hold things together until our glue sets up. So we are going to want to get this screw through this board and into this just enough to hold this in place. So we're going to make sure that we countersink this enough to get our screw in here. You might be using a different length of screws. I'm using 1.25 inches. If you have 1.5 inches, you're not going to have to countersink them as deep as I'm going to do today, but that's what we're going to do. So let's just do a quick measurement. I am going to just simply line this board up together and put a little mark right here. This is where I want my countersink hole. That's going to get me right in the center of this. And then I'm going to just carry that mark over to all these, because they're all going to have the same assembly process. So we're just going to put a mark in that same general area on all 4 of these. We're going to countersink through here, and then we can get this thing glued and screwed together. So let's get after it. And for the record, I'm also going to put a link down to this Amana countersink down in the bottom. This was $40, but this is absolutely one of the best countersinks that I have ever used. The pilot bit depth is adjustable. The actual countersink depth is adjustable, and this piece spins. So no matter how hard you push down on this, your depth is automatically going to be adjusted, and it's going to keep you from having anything that's going to burn up the top of your wood as you're going through there, like some countersinks can do. So I'll put a link down to that in the description below as well. I would recommend highly getting one of those. So all we're going to do now is glue this up. Trying to keep this camera over here clear for you guys. We're going to just glue this up, drive a screw through either side, and get our 2 pieces done this way. Once this is firmly in place, we can then bring this piece in, get an idea where this is going to go, put our mark on the side, countersink those holes, and repeat that process for the bottom. So let's do this.
Whoa, wait a second.
So I almost forgot, we need these holes as well. And when we put these countersinks, hopefully you guys can see this over here, we want to leave about 1/4 inch gap in between these 2 pieces. So when this connects with this piece, we just want to try to get our screws that are going to be coming up and into this board somewhere in this general area. I did not measure this, but I can tell you by looking at it, this is about 3/4 inch in from either side. And we're just going to drill through the bottom, make sure that we're going through the bottom. If you countersink through this side, your piece is going to want to mount upside down and your legs are going to go the wrong direction. So we need a couple countersinks in here as well. And we're just going to line them up with these pencil marks we drew. All right, now we can get this glued together. And as you can see, there's enough of that screw in there to hold this. This is more than adequate until this glue sets up. So that's why I was telling you, just make sure you countersink enough to get that screw in there. All right, let's repeat. Got a few more of these to go. Two of ours are to this point, and this is where these pieces that we talked about not needing to be exact, as long as your angle is 5 degrees, you're going to be able to slide this up. Look, it locks right into place right there. Now we're just going to take our pin, come over here and put our mark on either side, right in the middle of this particular board. That's where our mark is going to go on either end. And if you feel like measuring this, feel free. I'm not. I'm just eyeballing it like we do a lot of our projects here. Same thing. We're going to make our mark on the side. Just center it with this particular board. Now we can countersink and drive some screws in here. All right, we have our two frames built. Now, we are going to attach this to the top the same way. And yeah, you know what I was just doing? I was just testing to see if my drill was going to be able to fit in here. If not, I would have just had to use a smaller extension to get in here. But this particular part, all we're going to do is lay these down. We're going to put about 1/4 of an inch gap in there. We just want a little bit of a gap, just more for the look than anything else. And then we're going to come in about 1/2 inch on either side. Now, I know some of you guys have commented down below that you always measure. And I think by now some of you guys are realizing I don't always measure. I'm just kind of bringing this in an equal amount. Whatever this reveal is when I center this, I'm just trying to make this reveal equal to this. I'm just going to put a little pin line here so I know exactly where this is going to go back on, because I'm going to now take this off. I'm going to pop some glue on here, and then we're going to drive some screws in just like we did a minute ago, getting these sides assembled. And this little project is already done. So glue, screws, 2 times. Let's do this. Project 1, plant stand. Now, for those of you who are questioning, should you, could you? Yes, you could put an extra piece in here to stabilize this. I might actually wind up just running 1 piece in the middle just to give it a little stability. Doesn't really need it unless you're putting something extremely heavy on it. I know for a fact that the plant going on this is a pretty small plant. This is going to be more than adequate once this glue sets up. But as always, make it your own. Take my basic design. That's what we're going to do. If this is your first time tuning in, get used to this type of stuff. We do a very basic build on everything, and then it's up to you to customize it, and it's up to you to improve it. I want you guys to make my projects better than I make them on this series. When you do, send them to me. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. You can email me through my website. Please send me your pictures. I would really like to start doing a couple pictures of individuals' builds. Every single time we have one of these, I'd like to say, hey, last time when we did a video, here's 3 builds from 3 of the subscribers. I'd love to start doing that, but I need you guys to send me more of your builds and more of your pics. That's it. Project 1, cool little plant stand made from 1x2s and 2x4s. Time for project 2. All right, guys, let's get up to project 2. But real quick, let's notice I changed shirts, fresh cut. I had a couple of days in between filming the first part. I got busy with my real job and got a little sidetracked. So
a real job.
I'm out here a couple of days later finishing this one up. I usually try to do it all in one day, but today it didn't happen a couple of days ago. So today we're finishing it up. So we're going to make this hexagon shaped jewelry holder, and don't be overwhelmed. Out thinking yourself that it's a lot of angles and a lot of cuts. It's extremely simple, and even of those of you who do not have a miter saw, you're going to be able to knock this out. So let's start, as always, with our cut list. Now, our cut list for this is going to be extremely short and simple. We are going to need a 1x8. I'm not going to tell you the length yet because we're about to go over how we're going to get all of our measurements and our dimensions for this. And then we're going to need some slat material. Again, slats we use a lot of here on the beginners series. Basically looks like a yardstick, and you can buy as much of it as you want. So we're going to need some of that. That's it for our cut list. For our tool list, we're going to need our saw. In our case, as always, we use our miter saw. If not, feel free to use your handheld saw. You can do this. We are going to need a brad nailer or a hammer and nails, and that's it. Glue. Let's throw some glue on that tool list as well. But other than that, this is a really simple project. The most complicated part of building this is going to be to get all of our angles right. So first thing we're going to do is I have found the center line of this board. Now, I don't know what's going on in your area. Lately for me, they're shrinking lumber even more and more now. This is a 1x8. 1x8 used to be 3/4 inch thick by 7.5 inches wide. Everything I have bought in the past few months is 7.25. So look, it is what it is. There's not much we can do about it. All I have done is found the center line right here of this board, which half of 7.25 is 3 5/8. I put a mark. Then I headed over to my saw and I cut 2 cuts on this particular end. We did both of these cuts at 30 degrees. That gives us our 60-degree angle, which, if you know anything about a hexagon, it has 6 sides, which means 6 angles. 360 degrees divided by 6 means each of our angles needs to be 60 degrees to form our hexagon. The reason I only cut one end of this first was because now we can take and we can measure this length right here. Again, notice I'm moving my tape measure over and starting at 1, because if you put this here on an angle, you're not going to get an accurate measurement. So we're going to put our line on 1 and we're going to measure over. This particular angle is going to be 4 3/16. 4 3/16. Now, because it's a hexagon, all the sides should be evenly cut, not just the angles, but the lengths of the sides. So now we know that this side and this side are 4 3/16. We also want these sides to be 4 3/16. So same thing, we're going to just take our tape measure. We're going to put the 1 lined up here and go over 5 3/16. We will do the same exact thing at the bottom. And these 2 lines right here are where we're going to want our next 30-degree angle cut. Once those 2 angles are cut, we should have a perfectly symmetrical, evenly spaced, evenly angled cut hexagon. So I'm going to head over to the miter saw, cut these other 2 angles, and then we'll get back and trim this thing out. Now, I am fortunate enough to have a nice miter saw in my shop with a shadow line. And this shadow line allows me to basically just line this up and not have to measure this out. I'm putting my shadow line right on the outside of that pin mark, and we'll make this cut. All right, we are back from the miter saw, and as you can see, we have our perfectly cut symmetrical hexagon. Time to trim this out. We know the length of this particular measurement because we measured it and took it. It's 4 3/16 of an inch. What that means is all of our trim pieces that are going to go on this are going to be cut at 4 3/16 of an inch on the inside of our miters. We are going to miter both ends in opposite directions, and we're going to miter them at 30 degrees. That is going to give us our 60 degrees needed when the 2 angles come together.
Geometry's easy, yo.
I know, math. We talk about how much math sucks, but you never thought you'd use it as much as we do in woodworking before you got into woodworking. So we use it a lot. So I need 6 pieces at 4 3/16 of an inch on the inside length, the short length of our miter on these slats. Now, I'm going to do all of my work at the miter saw. Again, you can do this on your miter box by hand if you have a 30-degree angle on your miter box. If not, as always, I'll put a link down below to a cheap miter box on Amazon that you guys can pick up that does have a 30-degree slot cut into plastic, so you guys can cut 30 degrees. And as everything else, real quick, everything we do on this particular series, especially, mostly on our channel, but this series in particular, everything is a basic blueprint and scalable. And I know I tell you this all the time. I think I've already said it once this video, make it your own. If you don't feel comfortable doing 30-degree cuts and forming a hexagon, you can make this exact tray by doing a square and doing 45-degree cuts on your trim. It's not that complicated. Don't overcomplicate it. Like I told you at the beginning, don't overthink this. If you're not comfortable with 30-degree cuts, do 45s and make a square. This is still going to be something useful and decorative that somebody would like to have sitting on their nightstand or on their bathroom counter to hold their jewelry. So let's head over to this miter saw and let's get 6 pieces cut, 4 3/16 of an inch, 30 degrees on both ends, opposite directions. Let's do this. All that's left is we're going to glue these in place, tack them with a few brads. Project 2 is wrapped up. So I left that mistake in the video because mistakes happen. I'm not quite sure what I did, but clearly I didn't butt that piece tight up against my stop block because it was about 1/8 of an inch long and the joint wasn't meeting. So yeah, so I had to cut that a little shorter than it was. So all right, that's it. Like I said, I'm going to fill in a lot of these gaps here with some spackle or wood putty or whatever I have, especially the nail holes. And then I'm going to sand this thing down before we put a coat of paint on it. But again, this is scalable. This is something you could make square, rectangle, trapezoid, whatever. If you have a steamer and you can bend your trim, you could make ovals, circles, and ellipsoids or whatever. So, you know, math, let's talk about it no more. Seriously. That's it. Project 2, simple little hexagon shaped jewelry holder. Scale it up, scale it down, make it your own. Project 2, that's a wrap. Let's move on to Project 3. All right, Project 3, that set of nice looking outdoor candle holders. Now, we have made candle holders before out of some 4x4 material. Had a lot of comments down below about without a drill press, it was really hard to drill the hole in the top of the 4x4. It's also not the safest thing, and I hope I did my best in that particular video to explain to you guys that absolutely under no circumstance should you hold your drill and your lumber and try to drill in ever with a Forstner bit or a spade bit, especially into end grain. I hope I did a good enough job. So today we're going to make some new style 4x4 outdoor candle holders, and you're not going to need to drill today. This is going to be a really simple build, but as you can see, those things look really cool outside. So as always, our cut list. Boom. 2 pieces of 4x4. I have 1 piece cut to 6 inches long, and I have 1 piece cut to 9 inches long. That is going to be our 2 candle stands. Then we are going to need 2 types of material to trim this out. we have some 1x2 material that is going to go around our base. I'm not going to give you dimensions on the 1x2 at this point in time because I'm going to show you a couple different ways to trim out a project like this to make sure your joints are fairly tight. So we're going to need 1x2 for our bottom, and again, a slat for our top trim. Slats are wonderful. You can do so much with slats, and we use them a lot here, so get used to it. If this is your first time here. Let's get after this real quick. First thing, real quick, while I'm thinking about it, because I get a little like scattered out here sometimes. I'm sure you guys have never, ever noticed that, right?
Yeah, I knew.
Right. But last beginners episode, we did 2 projects, and we did like some techniques. We talked about stain and how to approach staining, especially pine, which doesn't take stain very well. This week we're doing 3 builds. Next episode we're going to do 2 builds plus another little section like that. Go down below and give me your ideas for what you guys would love to talk about in that section. I'm going to do that every other episode. I can give you 3 builds and then 2 builds and some tech tips. We'll do that every other week. So back to this build. So a 4x4, as you know, is not 4x4. This is 3.5 by 3.5, miraculously, because in our previous little section, I just told you it seems like lumber is shrinking and it's driving me freaking crazy.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
So we could easily take our material, and this is where I was going to show you 2 ways to do this. We can take our material. We know that this is 3.5. We can go over to our miter saw and we can cut our opposing angles. Short side at 3.5. We can cut our opposing angles at 45 degrees, cut 4 pieces of that. That should wrap around this just fine. Method 2 is going to be using butt joints or like an overlap type joint, and I'll show you over here on this camera. So if you don't have the ability to make accurate 45-degree cuts, an outdoor project like this where rustic is actually better, this might work for you. What I do is I take my material and I line up one end flush. And then I go to the other end and I put my pencil mark. And I'm going to repeat that cut for 2 sides. Once those 2 pieces are cut and tacked into place, we can then take our measurement for our total width of this material and cut that and create a butt joint on either end. So what I am going to do is I am going to build these that way today. For those of you who do not have a miter saw, I'm still going to use my miter saw. I'm still going to be a cheater. Sorry. But for those of you who don't have a miter saw, this is going to be a technique to where you can still get some tight joinery, nice even ends. It's just going to be a butt joint instead of a miter joint. So let's start by getting some measurements here. Again, we're going to make sure that this end is completely flush, and then we're going to mark our other end. Then we're going to head over to the miter saw, and we're going to cut 2 pieces at that length. Once we get back, we'll tack those in place, measure, and cut our opposite 2 sides, our opposing 2 sides. So let's get this cut. Okay, now that we have these 2 pieces cut, turn this over here so you can see. Now we can take this length from here to here, and we can either measure or mark. I am going to mark. If you want to measure, measure. Because I can tell you right now, if I measured, half of you would mark. So whatever, right? So we're just going to line this up. Make sure these stay tight. Get our end on this end flush. And then we can come in and put our pin mark, pencil mark, whatever on this end. Now we need 2 pieces this length to wrap out our base. So back over to the miter saw. And you can see that by taking our pin marks, we've got 4 joints that are nice and tight, and our ends are lined up really accurately. So we're going to do the same exact thing now for our top piece, which is going to be our slats. And the reason we're using two different sizes here is it's just going to give it a little bit better design. It's going to give it a little bit better look, and we don't want anything too bulky at the top. I like this smaller look. Hey, if you want to use 1x2 at the top as well, feel free. Again, make it your own. I know you're probably tired of hearing that, but seriously, damn it, guys, make it your own. Blueprints, your builds, make them better than mine. All right, I'm back from the miter saw, and again, because I use slats that have a rounded over edge because I make my own, I went ahead and mitered my top 4 joints. Use the same method for the top that you use on the bottom. Be honest with you, it's probably going to look a little bit better, but this is what I did. So now all we have to do is glue and tack all of this in place. And the way this thing is going to go together at the top is we're going to just have this sitting up about 1/4 of an inch. And the only reason that that's sitting up high is because when we put our candle in there, we want to have some kind of lip here to keep the candle from sliding around. So glue, brads. Remember, the length of our brads are based on the material that we're going through. This is 3/4 of an inch thick. So I need to make sure that I am using at least 1.25 inch long brad to get through this material and into that 4x4. So we're going to start with glue, which this is an outdoor project. So these are going to be using Titebond 3 because, again, Titebond 3 is waterproof. We're going to start with these 2 small pieces that we cut originally. We're going to put those on the opposite sides from each other. Then we'll put our other pieces on. Then we'll wrap the top with these 4 pieces, and this project is done. So let's get after it. That's it. Outdoor candle holder, rustic. This thing is designed to weather because it's made from cheap scrap material that I have laying around. You should probably do the same. If you don't like this exact design, make it your own. I made this one just to show you guys what you can do with some scrap material around your shop. I don't know about you. I got a freaking ton of scrap, and I love using it for little simple projects like this. This thing's going to get decorated. This thing's going to look really nice once it's painted, put outside like you guys saw. If you are painting this to put outside, please make sure you use an exterior paint. There is a difference. Exterior paint is designed to go outside, and interior paint is designed, wait for it, to go inside. It does matter. Make sure you use the proper finish whenever you're doing a project, whether it is stain, clear coat, or paint. Always use the right product for the right time. So this episode is done. 3 cool little projects. Hope you liked them. If you did, or if you didn't, comment down below. Let me know your thoughts, as always. So 2 quick things before we go. Number 1, I need your input on what you guys would like to see as far as those tech sections that we're going to throw in every other week. I know I mentioned it during this build, but seriously, please go down below. Let me know what you guys want to talk about. Last episode, we did one. We talked about finishing with stain and clear. This next time, we're going to talk about paint, interior, exterior, spray paint, roll paint, brush paint, etc. We're going to talk about some different ways that we finish our projects here in our shop and for our home. Let me know down in the comments what you'd like to see moving forward. Last thing, here's the numbers we need to get to a giveaway for next episode of our beginners series. I need this many likes. I need this many comments, and I need this many new subscribers. I think we have hit this number pretty regularly in our last 3 episodes. The channel's growing, and I am so thankful. Seriously, thank you guys for that. The channel is growing. This series is growing. This should not be tough to hit. If we can meet these numbers, I will give you guys a chance to win a tool for your shop valued around $50, $40 to $50. Now, speaking of giveaways, I'm pushing 10,000 subscribers, which, again, thank you so much. Never thought we'd get there. When we hit 10,000 subscribers, I'm going to pop up a little video saying, hey, We made it. Thank you guys. It's going to be a very short video, probably a minute to 2 minutes long, telling you that we got it. Thank you. I'm going to give away a really nice shop tool, something valued more around $100 when we reach that plateau. And all you need to do is go down below, make sure you leave a comment. I'll let the comments rack up for about a week. I'll draw a name and somebody's going to win something really nice. I'm actually thinking about giving away, not this particular one because it's used and I wouldn't do that to you, but I'm thinking about giving this away once we hit 10,000 because this has been one of my better purchases for my shop. And I think as a beginner in your growth in your woodworking journey, which seems to be a trendy little word to throw out there right now, this is going to be the most handy thing you probably will have for your shop. So I think this is what we're going to give away when we hit 10K. So get ready for that video. That should be coming up in the next 20 to 30 days, hopefully. So that's all I got for you this week. As always, I appreciate you spending 20 to 30 minutes of your time with me. And I appreciate all of your comments, all of your support, and everything you have done to help us grow here at New Craft Workshop. That's all I got. We'll catch you guys on YouTube.